Alright, let's go over this Fiesta real quick. Just because, yeah, like these drafts were really pitiful. So I wanted to go over them and make sure that I could explain exactly why I got so disappointed with these. I made a couple tweets about it, and yeah, um, I don't know, just pretty raw disappointment here. So okay, Jace Band first is pretty fine. If they know that either Lupa or Shaw who have it as a champion that they can play, and they haven't done too well in scrims with it, whatever it may be, it's a good ban. It counters a lot of current champs that TSM might like to play. Okay. So then we get the Nidalee ban from RNG, very standard red side, very, very standard. And then we see red side second ban from Caitlyn. Now the casters were confused about this. I think the thing is here is that if Doublelift is thinking to himself, all right, I'm going to second rotation, let's say a Sivir, and he doesn't want to take the skill matchup of, I just followed on a streamer, so you might get some notifications that they start streaming now afterwards. But anyway, yeah. So if let's say Doublelift has that 500 range matchup, any 500 range champ, and he says I don't want to take the 150 range deficit versus Uzi's Caitlyn. Okay, fine. Like if he doesn't want to take that 20 to 30 CS deficit that he may have to take depending on the champ, just because Uzi has a champion which he'll be able to abuse even harder on, that's fine and dandy. I can understand why, because with proper control, Uzi and Mata could turn bot lane into pretty much a dead lane, and one that they can just abuse really hard whenever they want, pretty much, if they maintain the control down there. That's why you saw Svenskeren actually going for a lot of plays top early game, which people didn't realize. But the whole time, I had actually been discussing and telling people that that's not going to matter. The early kills weren't going to matter, and they didn't. So we see Elise banned second here, pretty standard as well. She's been first picked a lot so far in the games before this Worlds. Syndra ban is good as well. Shahu's pretty good at her, if I recall correctly. A lot of Chinese mid laners are very good at her. And they have red side, so she's, I guess, picked red side first pick or second rotation in a lot of different scenarios. So, yeah, she's a pretty good ban there. And she does well into a lot of current matchups and actually stomps a good amount of them. So it might be limiting. Okay, but then anyway, 3 jungle bans by RNG, okay? That's pretty standard on, I mean, in general, like, total, there are 3. But anywhere in these games, you could see, honestly, from 3 all the way up to an extreme standard 6. But, alright, the Nami goes first pick. She's also very priority right now. She is a good champ. That's fine for them. And then they get this. Okay, well, here's the thing. They kind of got stumped here because what they could have done instead was first pick the League. They realized it the second time around, which they did, which was correct. But here, I guess they just didn't want, Mata to have a bully champion either. So they took that first and foremost, which I don't think matters that much because Mata's going to make something happen either way, which you end up seeing with Zalstar when the game gets remade. Skip forward a little. Okay, so what they end up picking here is Skarner Ezreal, and now this blew my mind. This was the first thing where I was like, okay, this is pretty confusing. Because if you're going to pick Ezreal, there's no reason that you should ban Caitlyn. His spike happens at 2 items much faster than Caitlyn, and it actually, he spikes in skirmishes way faster because his Sheen means a lot more than pretty much any singular component item that she could buy. So yeah, there's never a reason for you to ban Caitlyn if you're going to end up playing Ezreal. And there are a lot of ways, especially if you're going to have the Ezreal Nami, that you can circumvent any pretty much bully lane that they would be able to set down. And then if you have any form of control, then you just keep warded, you have your jungler track the enemy jungler, and you don't even really have to worry that much about ganks at all. So yeah. there's that. And then RNG answers with Karma Sivir. Now, the perfect move is to put Ezreal mid. The reason being is that if you put Ezreal mid, he doesn't have to lane against Uzi Sivir first and foremost, which you'll end up seeing how that goes before the remake happens. Okay, and he has a lot of fine blind matchups now into the meta. Like, and if he has any tough matchups, then they're easily accounted for with runes, which Bjerg should have. Like even just 1 or 2 AD carry rune pages set up. Actually, maybe even more. So, okay. You should put the Ezreal mid to, not have it lane against the Uzi Sivir, and because it's fine blind picked here, and they already have enough CC, obviously, with Nami Skarner, and can build on it later on. So, yeah. And if they have a double AD carry comp, then they'll get to scale with it, and their team fighting will be just fine into this 5v5 team fight comp that ends up being picked, as per usual, by RNG. And then what happens? Well, I'll tell you what happens. They pick Cassiopeia with Aurelion Soul open. Honestly, if you were to ask me right now, I'm not exactly sure how that matchup goes one-on-one, but what I would know for sure is that Aurelion Soul doesn't really look to one-on-one, and he would just outshove the ever-living hell out of Cassiopeia early on when she's mana-dependent, and then, probably just make plays happen in jungle and the side lanes, like a lot of LPL mids do with both Sol and Lissandra. So it actually would end up working really well there, because then you bridge the gap. That's the thing. Aurelion Sol and Lee Sin have the really good early game, and then the roaming prowess. Sivir and Rumble are going to scale really hard, and then obviously Sol's utility in team fights, and then the damage will come into play as well as the Karma speed up and all that. All right. So this draft is ass. Like, there's nothing that Bjergsen is going to be able to do mid, and bot lane pretty much is a dead lane here because of this matchup. And then you'll see here, if this game had actually played out, TSM would have maybe even gotten stomped harder than they did the second game. After the remake, I should say. Doublelift eats this. That's part of it, but there is the heal there. And then once they get into lane, so he doesn't have Mantra, and you just use this, and they can just shove. But then, since Uzi gets the shove now, I guess Doublelift's posturing in lane was bad also, because the way they approached in general was bad. Since they were, I guess, looking to do golems. But yeah, this will eventually become such a dead lane. Look at this. This is before the pause even happens. Look at Doublelift. And, sure, they have sustain and lane and everything, but that's the way the rest of the game would play out. The mid and the bot lane would just be completely dead to TSM. Skarner wouldn't be able to do anything with the CC that they do have, that they were set up for. And, just tragic. So then you look at the second game, right, and you're like, holy moly, everyone's tweeting before this game, furious, where is the competitive integrity? Oh my god, they first picked Lee Sin. Which was good, by the way. They should have first picked Lee Sin. But then all of a sudden, everything else is just fiesta. Okay, so they ban the Caitlyn again. Why? I don't know. They just don't want to play against it. They'd rather not. They saw it in scrims or something. I don't know why they would be scrimming within their own group, or if they maybe did it early on. But I don't think, especially, if you're going to end up picking Ezreal. They pick Jhin here, but... And even then, I don't know. Okay, so the Lee Sin pick here after the 3 jungle bans. This time around, it's like, okay, finally they did the right thing. They're well on their way. They can now build a lot of different things because they have an early game definitely to bridge any gaps and weakness. Either if he has scaling lanes that can't do much early, he just waits till 6, gets a guaranteed gank off then, and then just plays the game out depending on the pacing. Or if he has lanes that can really set him up, then he can just go ham. Which, I mean, Svenskeren ends up doing really well in the beginning of this game after his first death, don't get me wrong, but it's never going to be enough when you see these comps. Unless somehow, like, TSM manages a 6 to 10k gold lead as early as maybe 21 or 22 minutes, which isn't going to happen here. I think they lose the game every time versus RNG with this team comp. All right, so I really don't like Doublelift seeing Rumble here and taking Jhin. The fact of the matter is that once mid-game rolls around, when vision is set and the enemy has at least a solid amount of information before a fight starts out, Rumble's ult range is going to be enough where even if he just hits Doublelift with the tip of it, he's not going to be able to sit in it. And if he disrupts that, then by that time, the 5v5 has already begun and Doublelift's team is wiped and he's about to get killed, or he's about to get flanked on, killed, and then the rest of his team is going to get engulfed and wiped. So right here, this is really bad, dude. Like, they had very bad picks here. And the fact that they picked double... they picked their bot lane second rotation, okay. But why? They know the enemy solo lanes. I mean, granted, you do also want to pick the lanes based on team comps, but they could at least save one of these picks for later. When you pick both of these, or like when you pick double bot laners as immobile champions, and then the enemy team has an Alistar, and by mid-game they have MLXG with Hecarim's Phage and Sheen, and then Uzi's ultimate, as well as Alistar's Engage, and then Rumble ult on top of that, Cassiopeia AoE, you get the picture. It's not a pretty sight. It's a massacre. Oh, Kaelin's good into Jhin, by the way, in a lot of scenarios. So I guess they could have banned it if they were planning going on Jhin this time around. But either way, I think they honestly should have just went Ezreal again. Okay. Now here, this was huge. I was talking about the ROE with people earlier. ROE has rules of engagement. So what you got is a Kennen that wants to go in and play the maximum edge of his ultimate, either by getting as many stuns as possible in the total AoE, or playing the tip of the range to get the stuns and then lead to the follow-up. Now, that would be the perfect situation for them when they have an Orianna, so that he can get the stun, continue in with the ball, finish with the ball then, so that he doesn't have to take a ton of damage or Zhonya's early on and ruin the positioning of the ball, depending. Okay, but Alistar's up. All that happens here is if Kennen ever gets a good engage against the Alistar team, Mata ults, he W's the Kennen away, back into his team, and then he flash pulverizes the team that's waiting, clumped up like idiots, to follow up on this Kennen, because they can't. Because the zone and rules of engagement, the way they work between these two solo laners are far too different right now. Without an AoE engage primary tank like primary initiator, which you don't have here and here. I mean, you have her soft initiation early on, but like that's not going to lead to this, okay? When they have Alistar, and then they can just throw all that AoE down on you if you ever try to run at them, right? So yeah, then this Alistar pick goes through. Rest is history. You guys know what happens. Svenskeren starts carrying the early game, and like I told everyone and their mothers, and don't mean to be saying, oh hey, I'm super right. Like actually, I'm just really disappointed that this basic draft stuff had not been prepared and thought about beforehand. And if it was, then it could be stage fright. Honestly, I don't know. I've only ever been on stage myself, or around stage, I should say, at PAX for Pickban itself. We weren't necessarily allowed on. But one time, yeah. And our picks and bans went well there, but I've never had, obviously, the pressure of World Championship. So I'm not meaning this to shit on the TSM support staff or the players or anything like that. It does get like 60 seconds to you, man. They feel sometimes like they're 6 seconds when you're doing pick ban against the really, really good teams, especially like um, in like even in scrims, you know, if you're going up against a great mind, I've felt that before. Going up against LCS or NACS uh, experienced analysts other than myself, and I'm sure, yeah, here on the big stage, I could see why you would have difficulties like seeing every aspect for the very first game. So hopefully they get this cleaned up. Again, not meant to be personal against the support staff or players in any way, shape, or form. Just I think the both drafts could have went way, way better. And yeah, so hope you guys like that. I might try to produce some more team content now that Worlds is around and the season's starting up. Even though my YouTube channel has mainly been one-on-one coaching lately. So yeah, make sure to like and subscribe if you guys like the content, and I'll see you guys soon.